Hi friends, coming at you as usual from a new place, a strange for me anyway. So even though I've got a couple of journals saved up, I haven't been journaling that much, but I'm going to share the one from today because I'm still in the space that I was coming from when it was written, and I like to give it with as much reality as I can. So it's Halloween, the first journal of this day. I don't know yet what the Mayan day is, haven't looked it up. I feel so terribly lost. Now, don't get me wrong, this is a good space to be in. In my world of only good, better, and best, how could it be otherwise, right? Oh, and be sure to be in heart to follow the flow with this one. Be unafraid. Nothing can hurt you, my friends, not the real you. Nothing at all. Once you get there, once you enter this knowing about good, better, and best, you are fearless. And what that means is you've dropped most resistance to what is, to life. Then comes the trust in the knowing that the real you cannot be hurt, but it goes much farther than that. You begin to see that the whole thing, both the stage and the show and the actors themselves, are only love, are composed of that. Dropping all resistance, which means all fear, is really necessary to attain this perspective, for that's what it is. A new, or maybe a very old, angle of view. So, back to what's going on here, to this terribly lost feeling. So, what's with that, right? Well, I can't say that I know, but I suspect that knowing is here. Does that make any sense? Remember, this isn't some philosophy. This is my direct experience of things, and I don't ask them to make sense. Gave that up a good while ago. It's actually much easier this way. So, if knowing is here, then it may come through in the words of the journal. And that's been my experience anyway, so I open to that, to dropping resistance, to let it flow through. I don't care anymore. There's a type of giving up going on inside, one that I trust. I have many lifetimes as an ascetic, a monk in a cave, as a yogi, a nun, or a recluse in convents, ashrams, monasteries. Oh yes, I've made it my way of life again and again. Not having the full connection via the conscious mind to those lifetimes right now, I can't say yet how they turned out, even though the knowing is there. Now, it doesn't matter anyway, since it's now, the simultaneous now, but not here. So it's a field of my now here. I mention it only for its influence on where I am today, now here. For a number of years, that's largely how I've lived this life, unconcerned with anything but well, let's call it heart, but that's just a word. Though there were different words for it, or sometimes none, in those various lifetimes, it amounts to the same thing. Our internal connection with Source. God, Allah, whatever. Some years ago, in the midst of the pain and the frustration with how that pain limited or seemed to limit my life, I came to a major turning point. A major decision was made. Going forward, I would make no move unless and until it originated from heart. I knew what it was like to be danced, to not be the doer of a deed that was being done, and I sought that for a way of life. I feel that it was a good move. During this walk, I've learned many things, and many things have just fallen away, being now of no concern, and I like that. I was able to basically disconnect from the ways, the mores of society, how we were all taught to behave. Now, all of that didn't come all at once, nor did all of it come easily, though most did. There were some rough spots when this or that seemed to have more of a hold on me than I'd realize. But overall, it's been a good ride. And this, I suppose, is where most of the breathing space was attained between me and the mind. So in many ways, it let me go free and let spirit be born in this space. Yet I come back to now here where this lost feeling abides, to look at that. There is a giving up going on yet again, but I welcome it. This is another turning point into what I don't yet know. I don't know what I was after by this living more or less as if in a cave, going out so seldom, being so simple in life. I can't say I was or ever have been really after anything in this life. Anything but oneness with Source. When I say giving up, I don't mean I've completely changed my stripes. Oh no, the mystic is still very much alive here. And yet, something, again, has changed. An experiment has come to a close, just today. I realize now that it's as if I've been waiting for something, watching for that, but for what, once again, I don't know. It's so strange, friends, how we can go years in particular ways without quite recognizing things that are so obvious once they are seen. People are amazing creatures. So, I consciously now let that go. I stop waiting. If now here isn't good enough as it is, then I quit. Any sort of waiting for something, even something unknown, takes the focus. It takes it off of being purely in the now here, puts the now here out of focus. It's future focus, so it's not good enough. It's as if it somehow gently pollutes the now moment, if you get my drift. So I give it up. That's where the lost feeling comes in. Somehow, even though It was an unknown something I was awaiting and not aware that I was awaiting. Yet that waiting was there, and that's what's been surrendered right now. It feels like disconnecting from a mooring, from an anchor of sorts. God, life is so very strange. Now, in a way, I'm quite glad for the strangeness. If we knew now here all that our greater self knows, we simply couldn't play these parts in 3D. In the presence of that knowing, it just wouldn't work. Nothing could be any sort of surprise, and nothing could go wrong. To be here where we are, we've accepted some of the screwiest beliefs one in spirit could imagine, such as belief in right or wrong, or that evil is anything other than the absence of light, as revealed by its spelling. Evil is just live spelled backwards, and that tells the tale. And our belief in time. We come into these forms to play a dramatically limited version of what we truly are. We take on beliefs in things such as the human concept of time, which in our right mind or higher self we know is just bosh. And yet we do it for joy. Go figure, right? It's rather nuts, but there you go. Don't, under any conditions, expect to deeply understand anything here. This was one of my biggest letting goes previously. Believing things had to make sense to the mind, believing that I had to understand things somehow, that was even possible. When you release that one, you can begin to truly soar. Until you do, you just don't see how tightly you're tying yourself down by referring everything back to the mind, such that if it doesn't make sense to mind, you turn away from it, or you don't take the leap, whatever it is. There's a natural buoyancy to the soul or inner being, or whatever you like to call it, the being that you are in spirit. It wants to soar, so that's just natural to it. And yet, we bind and tie it down, anchoring it to this and that idea, concept, or belief. Belief in time as any sort of a limit is a big anchor that can hold us down to 3D. Now sure, time exists, even in spirit, but it's not a limit of any kind. Dr. Michael Newton, in his in-depth hypnotherapy research, discovered that it's possible for a being to live one life, then go and live the next life as the one prior to the life just lived. I'll say that again. I know it's a mind pretzel. He discovered that it's possible for a being to live one life and then cross over. And then for their next life, they come back to live the one prior to the one they just lived. Go figure, right? Well, you're one heck of a lot more open to such stuff and to anything once you don't try to force things to make sense of a mental sort. Now, it makes sense, all right, just not the sort of sense recognized by the mind. Sense of a higher or a deeper, an inner kind. Frankly, just being limited to using words to communicate would be like hobbles on a racehorse to our inner being. Thus, the forgetting is ever so necessary and in so many ways. And yet, now that the time of remembrance, of awakening is upon us, we can expect to be recalling so much of who and what we truly are. It goes better, I've found, if you don't expect it to be a mental remembering, for it's not. It's not the mind that awakens, it's you. You're the one who is eternal, not the mind, not the body. And yet we're so trained, so schooled to run simply everything by the mind. Well, just something else to be willing to release. I'm beginning to see self as rather like a helium balloon, one of those really big ones with a hanging basket to take you for rides. Only we're tied down so firmly to the earth by so many things that act like both sandbags and anchors. These are our set of beliefs serving to hold us down and grounded right where we are. And yet, we're still the balloons. We're meant to fly free, at least a part of the time. We don't begin to know that until we do some serious letting go, as I suspect all of you already know. Letting the little things go is more like throwing out the sandbags. It's helpful, but only if you're already airborne. If you're still heavily anchored by other major beliefs or core beliefs, getting rid of sandbags doesn't yet let you float free. When we come on a time in our lives when we somehow feel hugely lost, that can be symptomatic of us cutting an anchor loose, something that we somehow identified with, that we let anchor us to the duality of earth. Thus the lost feeling. What we may not realize at the time is our increased buoyancy. We're so focused on the seeming difficulty, or maybe on things seeming to go wrong in this or that way, that our increased elevation isn't yet apparent. And then, when we do notice it, notice how different it feels, that may inspire or tempt us into fear at first. It all seems so very strange. Well, my friends, let's look at it this way. It's strange to mind, not to us, not to the one who you really are, the real one. And once we can see through fear that way, we're really set. We just pulled up another anchor with that one. And it comes from the breathing space you develop between you and mind. Lovely outcome, that. So, still, you don't know where you are. You're in strange, seemingly new territory. You don't know yet what the rules are here, if there are any. Perhaps your biggest feeling is just being lost. Well, that's okay. Can you sit with that and just let it be? Can you accept it as simply what is? We can choose to do that. There's a tendency we're all familiar with to want to fix or improve things. Such as right now, in my mind, it just went through to correct the sentence. There's a tendency with which we're all familiar to want to fix or improve things. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's not something we have to act on either. It's also something we can just take a look at. Just watch for a bit. What'll we discover? Well, that'll be personal to each one, but The potential is there to do some more seeing through things, ego things, mind things. I have found that increased clarity generally comes out of this self-observation. This is truly an upside-down and backwards world, at least in a lot of ways. You have to admit this when you find that your most lost feeling times are really some of the best times of all. Again and endlessly again, we discover that nothing is just as it appears. Nothing is what it seems to be. And it's also quite enjoyable, making room for that, just accepting that that's how things are, or at least how they keep seeming to be. If you've been in heart or centered while with this journal, as it went on, you will have felt things lightening up. Felt the sandbags and maybe an anchor or two fall away. That's here for you. Only for you, you'll write it precisely your own way. My words won't quite carry the lift that you seek, the lift of which somehow you know you are capable. You will have to do it your own way. We all do. Well, we chase after this one and that one online, in the bookstores, conferences, retreats. You know what we're looking for? We're seeking someone in whom we can see our own exact reflection. Not the reflection of our form, but of our spirit instead. We want so badly to find that, so we seek it out endlessly until we don't, until we give up the search. In each of these teachers, the ones we've chosen, we find some part of our own greater self reflected back to us. We feel it in the resonance with their words, and yet it's never quite perfect somehow. One day we wake up and realize that we will never find exactly what we seek in someone else, in anyone else. Until then, though we've kept turning to heart in so many ways, we haven't quite reversed our outward focus on life. We've continued seeking whatever it is out there. And you know, I'm just talking about me here, okay? Until then, we didn't fully realize that it's not out there, that it can't possibly be found that way, but we just didn't know at the time. We were still seeking, still in search mode as we walked through our days, never quite making it into the now here. We may not have even realized this, or at least not consciously, for deep within, we all know. It's not until we do some more letting go that such things are seen. Now, sure, we get a laugh out of it pretty much every time, a laugh on the self, when we see just how obvious it is, how it was there in our face all along, just not seen till now. After enough times where the letting go brings on such clarity, we begin to realize the deep wisdom in it, even though it seems totally backwards. After all, how is it we can be enriched by just letting things go? To mind, it doesn't make sense, but of course, well, it's been fun, actually. Pain and all that's come from that. Oh, it doesn't so much feel like fun at the time, but doesn't it do so when it's viewed via hindsight? I find consistently that it does. That's one of the ways I've been shown that everything is perfectly okay. How could it not be when simply everything in hindsight shows its beauty to us? More and more cutting free and letting go. That's what I wish for all of you who share my deep inner desire to be one with Source, consciously. And I don't mean cutting free of earth or of the body and letting that go either. Now, surely I did once, for many long years, but no more. I found that joy and all that we seek is really right here, right now and right here. And that there's no need to go anywhere but right where I am. Again, it's reinforced for me the wisdom of only self and now here in heart. The beauty, the completeness found in that little phrase. And that tells me I didn't invent it either, that it's something I was shown from a deep inner wisdom that the me cannot claim. And that's fine. That's better than fine, actually. This increased breathing room is a heavenly thing. And it's also quite useful just for lightening up, something from which we could all benefit. Just about wherever we are, whatever we're doing or thinking, taking the advice to just lighten up and take self and life way less seriously would be ever so helpful, no matter what. We all do it. We get way too serious with things. We make mountains out of molehills, not realizing at the time that it's just a shift in perspective that could immediately clear things up. Oh, but with our beliefs intact, with our nose to the grindstone of life, just as we've been taught, do we listen to such advice? We can't even hear it. Breathing room. I sense I'm in process of expanding out into yet more of that, and it's nice. Right now, I don't even know where that lost feeling went. It's best to not look much to the past, for back then, things just wouldn't shift quite so fast as they're doing now. If we stay anchored to the norm of such things from back then, it just serves to anchor us down, to hold us back from whatever buoyancy is truly available in our now here. And yet, this time of my letting go was of looking to the future to bring something, I still know not what, but I did catch the self out in this future focusing. It didn't feel very good. Mind well knows by this time of living with me that no ultimate solutions are ever found in either past or future focus, but only right here. And yet, mind's habits run deep, don't they? So, we celebrate the now here again and ever again, and there's no again because it's just now, but anyway, words. There's an ultimate sort of peace here that no words can convey nor contain. By now, I think most of us have touched down any number of times into this peace, this sacred space hidden within. We know the feel of it, just not how to bring it about at will, as ego would so love to do. Thus, we find the aspirants speaking to the teachers, the guru, bemoaning the moment of awakening that somehow got away. All the while, not yet realizing that it's ego or mind, moaning, talking, seeing, being there. And perhaps that's even been the story for you. It's funny, really, how awakening seems to come in spurts. How very seldom it comes all at once. Even for someone like a Gautama Buddha, it was the journey that brought it, not just the one powerful experience under the bo tree. Had it not been for the steps taken all along his way, that awakening couldn't have come. The rough edges are generally removed before the deeper awakening will appear. So let us each one then be content with our now here. Will you choose to set your sail that way? It's always available, you know, just awaiting your pleasure in things. And though I know there is no end, as a turn of phrase, I'll say that in the end, it turns out that all of our seeking was only resistance instead. Our resistance to whatever appeared, to whatever is in our now. As we're moving on in awakening, the awakening ones can see that all seeking was the holding back of awakening, which was and is always there within, right now and right here. That which we sought, some of us traveling the whole world in our looking, wasn't ever found out there. All the while, as we in our outward focus sought it in the world or in others or in practices of this or that kind, such as in caves or as monks and the like, all the while that which we sought awaited us quietly within. It was and is always within. It is ever and only our inward focus on the now here that bears such fruit. We find that all along we were it. We were, in effect and reality, that which we sought. Oh, and what good-humored laughter erupts on the sighting. How silly we see we were in all of that oh-so-sincere seeking, in all of that effort to become what it turns out we already are. If you can't laugh at that, as Kismet snored at it, then you will when you're ready. Laughter itself, I think, is a very good sign. Not derisive, unkind laughter, not at all. I mean the deep, robust, sometimes even gut-splitting great humor that appears out of the self that was, and oh, so very seriously seeking it truly didn't know what. This is the laughter that just erupts. It does you, you don't do it. And yet, sometimes it also comes with just a wry smile. Both ways, it feels really good though. I guess that taking the self and life far less seriously is a really good prescription for a better life. Only not better in the time yet to come, but in that which is only now here. I don't find any answers at all from anything outside the now. By being loyal to just keep returning focus to that, then things are shown, and then clarity comes. We won't always know in what ways we've got parts of us subtly looking either to the past or the future. These things often must be shown to us by life, by others, by circumstances, or guides, whatever. Somehow, though, if we're open and if our sails are trimmed in alignment with our inner self's guidance, we will always be shown. What's brought before our gaze is always and ever the very best possible thing, too. Even and perhaps especially when it seems to hurt. At those moments when it seems to hurt most, we can know we're onto something important. No, not the thing that seems to hurt, but what's behind that? Who is the I being hurt there? That's the great potential of such times. The ability to take a step back and shift perspective on whatever it is. That's the jewel in the center of a lotus, it seems to me. The gift of great worth. Just knowing that it's all perfect, just as it is. So, I'm sure you see how it's all backwards somehow, again and yet again. I found it to be faithfully so, such that I call the realm of 3D the backwards realm. I thank Source that we're not limited to only the one dimension we find ourselves in, to 3D. It is our multi-dimensionality that comes to the rescue, forever offering varying perspectives on things, such that no matter what we're seeing, by shifting our angle of view, it can totally morph. How amazing is that? Namaste. Is you've dropped most resistance to what is, to life. Then comes the trust in the knowing that the real you cannot be hurt, but it goes much farther than that. You begin to see that the whole thing, both the stage and the show and the actors themselves, are only love, are composed of that. Dropping all resistance, which means all fear, is really necessary. The first journal of this day, I don't know yet what the Mayan day is, haven't looked it up. I feel so terribly lost. Now, don't get me wrong, this is a good space to be in. In my world of only good, better, and best, how could it be otherwise, right? Oh, and be sure to be in heart to follow the flow with this one. Be unafraid. Nothing can hurt you, my friends, not the real you. Nothing at all. Once you get there, once you enter this knowing about good, better, and best, you are fearless. And what that means, hi friends, coming at you as usual from a new place, a strange place, strange for me anyway. So even though I've got a couple of journals saved up, I haven't been journaling that much, but I'm going to share the one from today because I'm still in the space that I was coming from when it was written, and I like to give it with as much reality as I can. So it's Halloween. It comes through in the words of the journal. And that's been my experience anyway. So I open to that, to dropping resistance, to let it flow through. I don't care anymore. There's a type of giving up going on inside, one that I trust. I have many lifetimes as an ascetic, a monk in a cave, as a yogi, a nun, or a recluse in convents, ashrams, monasteries. Oh yes, I've made it my way of life again and again. Not having the full connection via the conscious mind to attain this perspective, for that's what it is, a new or maybe a very old angle of view. So, back to what's going on here, to this terribly lost feeling. So, what's with that, right? Well, I can't say that I know, but I suspect that knowing is here. Does that make any sense? Remember, this isn't some philosophy. This is my direct experience of things, and I don't ask them to make sense. Gave that up a good while ago. It's actually much easier this way. So, if knowing is here, then it may